So I've talked before about how on Sunday I kind of want to do more retro stuff if I can, if I have time to. I wouldn't mind doing more of the retro gaming scene, maybe talk about things that I remember from certain systems or my experiences either buying the system, getting it, or which games I really liked on them. And it came to my attention yesterday that the GameCube had actually turned 16. It came out back in 2001, November 18th actually. And now it's technically, I guess in a lot of places, old enough to drive. But it's very interesting because, of course, it makes people like myself, and I'm sure several other people on the internet yesterday, made them all feel very old, right? I mean, we kind of felt old when we saw the original Xbox was about the same way. And we found out that, like, Halo 1 was pretty, or Halo 3 was 10 years old. And you start to get that feeling that you've been around for a little while with some of these games. Now, of course, there are people who are even older that remember the Atari very fondly. But in this case, the GameCube hit right at that time when I wasn't too young and I also wasn't too old. It was like right in there at the early teenage years, right? When you don't have a ton of responsibility, but you're aware enough to get money if you need to by mowing grass and stuff like that. And then you also start to become aware enough of what's going on in the background with some of these companies or games coming out, because at this point, I was getting a little more acclimated to the internet because my household was very fortunate to have internet at a very early age. And it was very interesting, but I wanted to go over really how I got my GameCube, when I got it, what games I got with it, and how I built up the library, and what some of my favorite ones were. Now, a lot of people consider the GameCube to be kind of a commercial failure, and to a degree it was. If you really look at its sales figures, it sold 8 million more than the Wii U, which is considered a disaster. Now, I do think both of these kind of either help or hurt the previous or successor in terms of console generation. For example, the Wii looked like a massive success. I mean, it sold over 100 million, so it was, but the fact that the GameCube sold roughly 21 million, that really made the Wii look great. But then the Wii also made the Wii U look terrible because, of course, the Wii U struggled to get over 13 million sold, and they just came off of this massive success with the Wii. So it kind of played to both ways. But at the time, the GameCube technically finished in last place in that generation, even behind the Xbox. Now, I got my GameCube in Christmas of 2002, so it was pretty much after the first year of the system. It had completed its first year, and I knew that Christmas I wanted to get a GameCube, so that's what I asked for. Generally, because of course you're a little younger at the time, you pretty much wait for Christmas to come around unless you're in a very fortunate family or maybe they're very affluent. Most of the time I would wait for Christmas time and I would ask for that one big system. And then pretty much leading up to that, I had gotten a system every single year prior to that. So I got the Dreamcast one year, I got a PlayStation 1 one year, I got the N64 was the first system I got from that generation. And it was pretty much building up to the GameCube being the first console I get from this following generation. That's right, between the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox, the GameCube was the first system I ended up getting. In order, I went GameCube, Xbox, and then PS2. The PS2 was actually the last system I got in that generation. It also helped that the PS2 happened to be around for what seemed like forever, so it was very fortunate to get that last, since the GameCube and Xbox didn't last nearly as long. But that year I got the GameCube. Now, when I got the GameCube, the first two games I got with it, which one was a little odd, but I understand where they're coming from, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. One was Star Wars Rogue Squadron Rogue Leader. I love that game. It was one of my favorite games because at the time, the visuals were amazing. Like, seriously, when you put that game in and it did that shift at the end when you blow up the Death Star to the actual movie, I can't tell you how impressive full motion video was at the time. Like, really, I can't stress this enough. When we would see full motion video play on the PS1, and then I would get the GameCube, and after coming from the 64, which rarely had it, I mean, even when I played the wrestling games, which was the other game I got with the GameCube, when they would do their little Titantron videos, it were just slideshows. It would just be slideshows because the 64 couldn't pack in that many full motion videos. You just couldn't pack them in onto the cartridge. But here's the GameCube, and you have the Death Star explosion playing directly from the movie. You have the credits. When you first turn it on, it has scenes from the movie playing. It was, like, amazing. And then, of course, the visuals were astounding as well. Really, I have so many fond memories of Rogue Squadron because my household was a big Star Wars and Star Trek household. Like, my dad and I were super into the stuff, so it was really cool to see that and run all the different missions. We were the family playing X-Wing and TIE Fighter on our old, Pentium 2s with the joysticks and everything. So getting to something like Rogue Squadron is a massive leap in visuals and appearance and presentation. It was that impressive. The other game I actually got with the GameCube on Christmas, I unwrapped it with the system alongside a memory card and Rogue Squadron, was it was WWF WrestleMania X8 or 18. Now, this was actually in a lot of promotional material. I don't think people realize this. This was all over the place. Like, we had the guy with the wavebird sitting on the toilet, and he was looking through the doorway, and he was actually playing WrestleMania X8 or 18 from what I remember. Now, I actually played over at my friend's house a lot on the PS2. I played a lot of the wrestling games on there, and I liked it. I played No Mercy a lot on the 64. I have a feeling my parents went there. They got Rogue Squadron because they were Star Wars people. I need that game, obviously, but they also probably looked around and they said, well, he plays wrestling over at his friend's house a lot, and he had wrestling on the 64. Let's just get him a wrestling game. WrestleMania 18 was not a very good game. It was very limited in function. There was no story mode or anything. You played a tournament, but the arcade part was fun. Just actually fighting people. You'd hit A and B at the same time to do a special move, so you kind of hit it out of nowhere as long as you had it stored. And it was kind of fun for multiplayer aspects, but to sit down and play by yourself, it was kind of boring. And the visuals, while they were good at the time, I look back on it now and I'm like, ooh, man, that's rough looking. At least like Rogue Squadron, I could look back and be like, yeah, that's still a good looking game. Not WrestleMania X8. Now, the first game I ever bought for this system was, as you can imagine, the reason that I really wanted the GameCube at the time, and that was Super Smash Bros. Melee. I desperately wanted this game, so my birthday falls 3 days after Christmas. It's the 28th of December, and as you can imagine, my birthday was usually pretty lean in terms of presents or anything like that. It was. They did their best, but it's at the Christmas. What are you gonna do about that, right? So a lot of times I'd have a present, probably withheld from Christmas, I assume, and thrown onto my birthday or something, but I pulled enough money from Christmas cards, from birthday cards, and I specifically vividly remember going to the Walmart up here. That Walmart eventually turned and moved to the Super Walmart that's across the street now, but it was the regular Walmart. I vividly remember going there, looking in the glass case, pointing at it and said, I'm going to take Smash Bros. Melee. That's the one I want. And we also bought an extra controller because you need extra controllers, which I think were like $50 at the time, so they're still kind of pricey. They're 40 or 50. We didn't get the Wavebird because that was actually pretty expensive from what I remember. But we got another wired Nintendo branded controller, and we went home happy. I mean, we played Melee like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I so many hours, because of course we're on Christmas break, and when you're 13, 14, 15, when you're in there, and you don't really have much else to do, and it's snowing out, and maybe you're not playing in the snow because there's a lot going on or it's too cold, you're just downstairs, and like we're in the basement, we're just playing Melee nonstop, like constantly. That was the game we played for the longest time. It was Melee, 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 and then I pop in Rogue Leader for occasionally, but then back to Melee. And that would kind of lead into really a lot of the multiplayer games that we ended up getting. For example, a little later on, we ended up getting Mario Party 4 because, of course, we did the one thing that I'm sure many people cringe thinking back on right now. We took our Nintendo 64 and our I think we had like 13, 14 games, and they weren't all bad games. We had like Mario 64, we had Paper Mario, we had, of course, Smash Bros. We had 2 of the Mario parties. I want to say it was 1 and 2. We didn't have 3. But we take all of these games, we trade them in, and I think we had like $130 in credit, you know, with the system and expansion pack Donkey Kong. It wasn't a lot, and now I look back on it, I should have kept it. I wish I'd go back in time, tell my young self, hold on to that, here's $130, don't get rid of it, but, you know, what can I do? I think I even had boxes for a lot of the stuff. I was one of those kids that actually kept their boxes. But we ended up getting Mario Party 4, Mario Party 4, and that actually led into something that was really funny, and I remember noticing it, and I was like, this is amazing. This is, like, it's never gonna be better than this. It's gonna sound really dumb to a lot of you guys, but the fact that you would go into the game, and instead of everyone having like a ball for a hand, everyone had like fingers like in Mario Party. It sounds so weird, right? But like Mario had actual fingers. All of his fingers were actually like rendered and everything. They would all move individually, and stuff like that was just like, wow, that's mind-blowing to see that, right? It was so clean looking, the visuals were great, the load times weren't nearly as long as the PS2 with its games, so it was the coolest thing. So we got that. We also got Animal Crossing. Now, Animal Crossing kind of took over our lives for about a month, because we played that to no end, and it was just so cool to see this, because it was like The Sims, because if you're older, like, not really, like, I guess I'm not super old, but if you were my age at the time, you know the original Sims, when that came around on PC, it kind of took over everyone's lives as well. But Animal Crossing felt like a more arcadey version of it, where I didn't have to tell them to go to the bathroom or anything like that. And when I was playing Animal Crossing, it was something you could get lost in. I mean, really, it introduced us to the concept of a mortgage, which it sounds weird now I look back on it now because you have Tom Nook coming to get bells from you, but that was like my first my first experience paying a mortgage, was paying Tom Nook with bells. Now, because we were a little younger, we kind of went through the rest of the year kind of with those games for the most part, because again, we're a little younger, so you really don't get a lot of games whenever you want them. So we kind of stuck with those for quite a while, actually. I don't remember getting a lot of new games that year. And then we come up to the following Christmas, and I remember a few games that we really wanted. I remember the big one we really wanted was Skies of Arcadia on the GameCube, and we got it, which was awesome. We got another controller. I think we got another memory card, and then we also got a Wavebird controller alongside a wired controller. So we were getting pretty decked out with accessories. I think we had enough controllers to do all 4 people at the time without anyone having to bring over a controller. So we had enough controllers for 4 people to play Melee. We were doing some Skies of Arcadia, and overall it was a good time. I think we also got some other little things, but for the most part, we kind of decked out our GameCube selection. I also remember saving a lot of money, and I also bought an Xbox that year myself with all the gift cards and birthday money and stuff like that I had. I remember I bought an original Xbox as well because things were ramping up with Halo, and I remember Halo 2 was being sought after like crazy, but from then on, I started buying the wrestling games every year. I remember doing that. I remember WrestleMania 19 came out, which was super weird because you would throw construction workers off the side of buildings. And then I remember they went to Day of Reckoning, so they went away from WrestleMania and started just doing Day of Reckoning. So I got the first one. I never got the second one. But the first one was actually really good. There was a full story mode. You would way more customization with your characters and stuff. And it was never as good as the PS2 games. The PS2 games just got so much love just because there were so many PS2s out there. But if you've never played like Day of Reckoning on the GameCube, it's worth checking out. They had like a full stamina system and stuff already in the game before a lot of wrestling games had it. So it was kind of cool to see. But overall, we did more GameCube, but for the most part, this was around when I started to kind of move away and getting into the original Xbox, because that's when Xbox Live started to show up, was the following year. And a lot of us started playing Halo and stuff, Halo 2 specifically, online. And unfortunately, at that point, the GameCube kind of started to fall into the background. Mostly because, for the most part, we got Mario Sunshine came in that Christmas as well. I remember we asked for that and we got it. And after we played all the way through it, and we kind of stepped away from the GameCube. At least I did, and I just did a lot of original Xbox. I will say the GameCube was great because we would take it on vacation with us more than any other system. It had a handle, so we would take that with us. But for the most part, it became the party system. It was a system when my parents had their friends over or something. We'd go over someone's house. We'd take it with us. And the GameCube was like the party system. So people came over, we were playing Melee, we were playing Mario Kart. That was one, Mario Kart was one that we actually got. I think we had actually traded some of our GameCube games in, which I still hate my young self for doing that. We actually ended up getting Mario Kart at some point. I don't remember exactly when. I just know we traded in games like Mario Sunshine, because it was a one-player game that we beat, and we were like, yeah, we're done with it. And then I think a Mario Party or something, because we got the following Mario Party 5, I think. So we traded in 4, but it was one of those things that as a dumb kid, I look back and get mad at myself because we traded stuff in. But at that point, I kind of started to fade away from the GameCube and more onto the original Xbox with things like Halo 2, just because we could play online. And it was so cool. Unfortunately, the GameCube just didn't have a big online game like a Halo, and I think that also hurt it, because the Xbox really picked up a lot of steam when Xbox Live came out with Halo 2, just because everybody wanted to play that online. It was so cool. But the GameCube was definitely the system that myself as like a younger kid really liked, right? In the early teenage years. And when I was looking up stuff online, this is before YouTube, this is when I was going on like message boards, and we were posting some of the worst looking video clips online. I'm trying to remember I don't remember which video website had these, but people were posting clips on forums and stuff, and it was very early in the internet. But that was the system I really liked. I would get that, I would watch TV with G4, and it was a great system. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on the GameCube. This is pretty much my build up with the GameCube when I got it, which games I went through and everything. But I'm curious where you guys fall on this one, and if it was a system you remember, or if maybe you missed out on the GameCube, or maybe you're even too young to remember it like that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.